wherever the sun may find you, and the camera's off. My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts. And oh my goodness, I am so dying for some caffeine this morning. Not like I haven't had like 3 pots in the last 18 hours I've been up, but who's counting? Today I am rocking an Italian roast. If you haven't experienced an Italian roasted coffee, it's usually slightly saltier tasting, very, very smoky, lots of fun. It just hits your taste buds smack right dab and where you need it, and kind of gets you going. And if you haven't figured it out by now, dash gurnit. Today's concept is about profanity. Oh my goodness, I loves my profanity. It all started when I met a couple of dudes who had previously been in the Navy and ended up rocking an Army uniform for whatever reason. And in doing so, they brought their epic PhDs full of profanity into our little enclave of soldiering. And I mean, let's face it, Army, we swear a little, but sailors, man, those dudes in close quarters can really throw some lingo. They swear a lot, and they are very good at it. So where does this bring us as far as like writing goes? How do you determine whether or not something is really good and really needs to be put into your manuscript? Is it going to hit the right audience? Do you have blunt force segue from Facebook user? Do you decide when what the age category is that you're aiming this particular novel or manuscript at, and if so, does profanity fit into that bag of audience that you're really looking to affect, and does it really need to be in there? Because I mean, at what point is profanity so gratuitous that it's no longer impacting the story? My grandfather was an Italian immigrant who used to say all the time that one F-bomb stops a conversation, multiple will just get you ignored. He was a big proponent of that if you were going to live in America, you really needed to speak well. And he would occasionally throw some salty language in here and there and kind of get his point across that way. But you wouldn't see it as every other word was something really, really profane. And if he swore, it really stopped the conversation in a room. Not to mention he had a very deep, deep voice. That combined with the fact that he was a very statuesque man, he's a very, very tall guy. If he ended up, excuse me, shutting the door because my cat is obnoxious. But I mean, if he had to throw a little bit of color into a language, and throw some profanity down on the table, you really stopped and took note of or took stock of what you were doing, because you have obviously made the wrong choice at that particular moment. So where do we take that lesson and apply it to our manuscript? So if you're writing military science fiction, military fiction, military thriller, modern day thriller, the occasional swear will probably jolt your reader just enough to make the situation kind of warrant the profanity, but not necessarily drag them out of things so that it's taking away from the enjoyment. You'll see this a lot if you're dealing with like something like Generation Kill or anything where they're really investigating soldier culture or Marine culture, military culture of any sort. Guys have a tendency, and girls too, have a tendency to really salt the language as things go on, especially the more comfortable they are with each other. And eventually it gets to a point where you don't even hear it anymore. Using an F-bomb is kind of like using a comma. It really doesn't it really doesn't kind of register in your everyday speech because you're hearing it so much, especially when things become tense. Such as you're on a long convoy while on a deployment, and all of a sudden one of your vehicles breaks down for whatever reason. Now, all of a sudden, profanity is everywhere. And do you put that into your manuscript? Do you put every F-bomb, or real derogatory stuff in there to kind of show that that's what the culture is like? Or do you hold it back a little bit and say, he swore under his breath, or he swore out loud, or what have you? This is going to play into how your work is received and set the tone for how these people interact with each other. In my alter ego, when I'm not sitting down in a chair, dodging cats and using my squirt bottle. There is, I work with a lot of truck drivers. I work with delivery personnel. I work with warehouse personnel, and they have a tendency to get salty at times and really throw down some language. Does it bother me? No, because like I said, I used to work with some Navy guys in my Army career, and man, the level of Ryan Reynolds language that flew from these guys' tongues was just superb. I mean, anybody can sit there and throw a four-letter word and make it seem like it's got a little oomph behind it. But man, those Navy guys could swear, some like Full Metal Jacket type stuff. But I mean, at what point do we take all this language to show a culture, and what point do we aim it at the audience and in only small bits to give it the kind of impact we're hoping it has? And then where do we take that that same, oh, this damn cat. Now, at what point do we still take that same kind of situation and now aim that back at a younger audience? So a couple of properties I can think where they would definitely use all sorts of swearing, Hunger Games. Even though it's aimed at a younger adult audience, you can't tell me that the situation those people were in didn't warrant tons and tons of huge profanity. Didn't warrant lots of some of the traumatic situations, didn't warrant lots of colorful expressions that would have been inappropriate for the audience it was aimed at. But yet it was written in a way to where a young adult audience can read it. And it kind of poses a neat question. Is the author responsible for tailoring that language? I mean, does he have to say, or does he or she have to say, well, it's not my responsibility. I mean, I knew how to swear by age 13. Or do we as authors and people who are considered entertainers in one form or another, do we draw that line and say, hey, it's not my responsibility to teach you that language at this age, so forth and so on? So just something to think about for today as you're going through and getting those words down, throwing a little bit of spit and polish as you're throwing hate, slander, and language all over the page. I appreciate you guys coming out and spending a little bit of your morning with us. Don't forget that you could find Keystroke Medium live on Monday nights with Josh, Scott, and Chuck. And on Thursday nights, with Lauren and Kayleen as they dive into the depths. Oh, dagnabbit. And try to snag a bunch of secrets so that we as aspiring authors can learn a little bit more about the craft as we go. 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we try and do Coffee and Concepts. And then, of course, Josh Caillou is doing long-form storytelling and interviews through his show on Keystroke Medium. Thanks. Keep writing. And try to keep it clean. Hey, have fun and cheers.